In order to do a conversion where you have a conversion factor, we're going to go ahead and use T-charts. And so what I'm going to do here is I'm going to show you how to set up a T-chart and how to do basic conversions that you already maybe know how to do or where a conversion factor is given to you. So when we do a T-chart, this is what it's going to look like right here. We are going to start with a T, okay? And so you will always start with your given and the unit, and that goes up in this left box over here. Okay, so that would be step 1. Then whatever unit is right here, so I'm calling it unit A, bring it down to the bottom of the T-chart. So the bottom meaning the next over, so go over to the right to the bottom. Okay, so this is step 1. Here's step 2. And then lastly, whatever unit you want to convert to is going to be unit B, and that will be up at the top. Okay, then some number will go in front of here and in front of here, and then I'll show you how to calculate that, but first let's just work on the basic T-chart setup. Okay, so let's start with an example of how to set this up. So I'm going to start with my given and my unknown, because that will help us with figuring out what our units are going to look like and what our T-chart will look like. So how many seconds are in 89 minutes? So this is my given right here, and I'm trying to find out how many seconds. Okay, so I'll call this my unknown. So let's start with RT. Okay, and then I'll start my given up here, so 89 minutes. My unit here is minutes, so I will bring minutes down to the bottom, and then my unknown will be seconds, so I'll put seconds up at the top. Okay, now this is something that you would have to think about. How many seconds are in a minute, or you might think about how many minutes are in a second. Now the way that we know it is for every 1 minute there are 60 seconds. Okay, so that's my conversion factor. So if I, look this up, if I didn't know, 1 minute equals 60 seconds, what I'm going to do is I'm going to match up my unit, so minute, so the 1 will go in front of minute, and then for second, 60 will go in front of seconds. Okay, so that's just a basic T-chart setup that I know you already know the conversion factor of. So what happens if we don't know a conversion factor and it's given to us? Right here, how many feet in 2.2 meters? This will be our given. So this is what we're going to start with. And I would like to know how many feet, so that would be my unknown. Okay, so that's my unit B. Right here is my conversion factor, so I don't need to know this ahead of time. That's given to me. Okay, so that's what we're going to use to fit into our T-chart. So let's start with the given, which is 2.2 meters. Okay, so now I'm going to draw my T. Meters is my unit A, so I'm going to bring that directly down to the bottom. And what I want is feet, so I'm going to put that up at the top. Okay, now this is something that we're not very familiar with, so I need to use my conversion factor. So right here, meter, there's a 1 in front of it, so I'm going to put a 1 in front of the meter. And right here, feet has 3.28, so I'm going to match it up here, and 3.28 will go in front of feet. Okay? So that's my second example of how to set up a T-chart. So let's try it again, only this time I'm going to show you where even if the unit looks a little confusing or challenging or maybe a little different, we're still going to treat it the same way. Okay? So right here, how many 3.5 feet per second to meters per second. So sorry, that was kind of weird. So I want you to convert from, okay, so convert 3.5 feet per second to meter per second. So now I'm going to put 3.5 feet. Now notice how it says per second. Anytime you see something that's per second, that really just means that it means divided by second. Okay? Now, the way that we can show divided by is also by putting it underneath. Okay? So sometimes you've seen like people who do, like if it's 100 divided by 2, this is the same way as saying 100 divided by 2. But because we're doing a T-chart where there's a bottom and a top, anytime I'm dividing by something, I'm going to put it at the bottom. So right here, feet per second means that I'm taking feet and dividing it by second. So I'm actually going to put second down here at the bottom because it's per second. Okay. Now, what am I really trying to convert? When I look here, it says feet per second to meter per second. Now, it looks like meter per second, the same thing, only the difference is right here is feet, right here is meter, but the per second part is the same. So really, this per second stuff isn't going to change, okay? So it does not change. So I'm just going to leave that at the bottom, but what does change is the feet part, so that's all I'm going to worry about. So again, whatever unit is up there, I'm going to bring down to the bottom and put feet. Okay? Now I want to go from feet to meter, so this is my unknown. So I'm going to put meter up there. Okay, so this is my given, and then that's my unknown. Now, I'm going to use the same conversion factor that I used up in number 2. So if we look right here, 1 is in front of meter, so I'm going to put 1 in front of meter. And then feet is 3.28, so 3.28 go in front of feet. Okay? So this was a basic T-chart setup. We went from knowing the conversion factor, which is minutes to second, to being given the conversion factor, which is meter to feet. And then over here, I showed you how to do something where the unit is a little like more difficult. In this case, it's feet per second. But all I was really worried about was how to get feet to meter. Okay? So now that we have all of that, let's go ahead and try doing some calculations, okay? So how to calculate? If the numbers are on top of the T-chart, we're going to multiply them. If the numbers are on the bottom, that will be what we divide, which is what I just talked about with the seconds. Keep the same number of sig figs as the given, so I am going to review sig figs right here. And then the unit is what is not canceled out, okay? So I'm going to show you what I mean by that. So I'm going to go ahead and switch colors here so that we can show you what I'm talking about with the cancel out. Okay, so let's do that. Okay, so now let's go back to my examples, and now let's do the calculations. So again, if my numbers are on the top of the T-chart, so what I'm talking about here is with example 1, 89 minutes, then you see how it's 60 up here, and then 1 down here. So if the number's on the top, I'm going to multiply. Then if it's on the bottom, I'm going to divide. Okay, so the way that this is going to look is 89 times 60 divided by 1. Okay, so when you put that into your calculator, you will get 5,340 seconds. Okay, now let me show you how we get seconds. If I take minute, and remember what I said, anything on the bottom is minute, what happens when you take minute over minute? Okay, in math that would equal to 1. So what you guys are used to saying is this cancels out. So I will cross it out because it's the same. Again, when there's 1 minute on the top, 1 minute on the bottom, I can go ahead and cancel it out. So then all that's left is seconds. So now you see that what's left is seconds here. Okay, so let's go ahead and do significant figures. So in 89, there are 2. It is the 8 and the 9. So that's 2 sig figs. Okay? Over here, I want to keep 2 sig figs. So that would be the 5 and the 3. Remember, this is 5,340. So I cannot put 53 seconds because that's not the same thing. So instead, what I'm going to do is I'm going to make these zeros, but these zeros will not count as significant figures. So my answer is 5,300 seconds. Okay, so basically all I did was round this tens place up to the hundredths place. Okay, next let's try it again. So again, whatever number's on the top, so 2.2 times 3.28, and whatever number's on the bottom we divide. So divide by 1, Okay, I put that into my calculator and I get 7.216. Now let's go ahead and see what gets canceled out. So again, whatever is on the bottom, or sorry, whatever we are taking on the top that I also see on the bottom gets canceled out. So in this case, meter and meter, one was on top, one was on the bottom, so that cancels out. What's left? Feet. So feet will be my answer. Over here, 2.2 is 2 sig figs. So that means I only want to keep 2 here. Okay, so 7.2. Okay, now 7.2, and if I write 7.2, you see how it's still the same value, meaning this is still in the ones place, that's still in the tens place. I do not need to turn these into zeros, okay, so do not do that. So I'm just going to take the 1 and 6 off, and what's left is 7.2 feet. Okay, now let's go ahead and try this one. Now you're going to see that the units are going to be a little bit different here, but let's do the math. So again, 3.5 and 1 are on the top. So I'm going to multiply that, 3.5 times 1. Whatever number's at the bottom, we're going to divide. So 3.28 on the bottom. Okay, I put that into my calculator, I get 1.067, and now let's look at the unit. So the unit is feet, and notice how feet is also on the bottom, so I'm going to cancel that out. Now what unit is left? Meters is at the top, so I'm going to put meters. But I also see that seconds is still on the bottom, so I have to leave the seconds at the bottom, so you can leave it like that. Okay, 3.5 is 2 sig figs again, so I'm going to keep 2 sig figs. So the first one is 1, and then the 0. Okay, now I'm going to look behind it. This 6 can round up this 0 to a 1, so this answer will be 1.1 meters per second.